1998 then was a time of extraordinary transition and grief for you personally. And politically, a lot happened in Northern Ireland. They say it's signed the Good Friday Agreement. I know what it was like living there then, but I would love to know what your experience was of going to school in Belfast and how aware you were of what is diminishingly referred to as the Troubles.
Yeah. Funny, isn't it, how meek that makes it sound, the Troubles. I've never shied away from how middle class my upbringing was. It was about as middle class as you can get in the north of Ireland. But in the same breath, you're growing up in Belfast and you're in school in the middle of Belfast, and there's no one who grew up or lived in that country during those times who wasn't affected by the Troubles, no matter what your situation was. Even things like how normal, trying to plan to go into town, obviously before mobile phones and stuff, on a Saturday, we always met outside McDonald's in the centre of town just to, wander around on a Saturday afternoon. And the amount of times you'd phone the house phone of your friend because you'd seen on the news there's a bomb scare. I mean, that was kind of in my head every weekend. It was like, I guess, did you see the news? Yeah, there's a bomb scare there, so not going into town today. I mean, the idea of that now, honestly, how commonplace that sentence was. And, my dad worked at the Royal his whole life, which is, on the Falls Road in West Belfast, and delivered, as you said, at the start of this, over 6,000 babies in Northern Ireland. That's not 6,000 Catholic babies, 6,000 Protestant babies. That is a real mix of everything. So I feel like I was brought up in a very liberal household where religion was very rarely mentioned. I think we sort of went to church a little bit in the beginning of our lives. I don't think I went after the age of 7. And I think it was only, as talking to Dad now, that it was only because my mum and my dad's parents were very religious, and it was sort of keeping up appearances with them still around that we kept that up. And I never grew up feeling like I was on one side or the other. I didn't understand it. And actually, a very good thing about Methody was it was very mixed. When most people here or in England or anywhere else hear mixed, they think you mean boy girl, but it was very mixed Catholic Protestant at Methody and many other denominations, which was a great thing. If I think of my best mates from school, literally 50-50, probably slightly edging more Catholic. And we all grew up in a generation where you wanted to distance yourself from even that, even knowing what each other are, But truth be told, it's still totally divided. Countries, only 3% of schools are mixed, segregated. And there's still areas that Catholics will never live in and areas Protestants will never live in, particularly only really in the working class areas. So as much as the Good Friday Agreement was a huge thing, and obviously it's been an incredible marking for the country, there's still deep division there, and it's a very complicated place.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about religion, because I remember I ended up going to school in England, and I remember the first time I heard classmates talking openly about what religion they were, and I was so shocked.
Well, yeah.
Because in the north of Ireland, it carried such tribal profundity. Like, you would never speak openly about it for fear of something happening. I totally relate to that. And you're right that Methody was mixed, but I remember at Methody, because I was a weekly boarder, and I would walk to the bus station to get the bus back home on a Saturday, and I would walk past Europa Hotel, which is infamous for being the most bombed hotel in Europe. And I remember this one time there'd been a bomb the night before, every single window had shattered at the Europa Hotel, and there were just these hulking, metal, warped, unrecognisable messes that had been cars. Right. And that was just normal.
Yeah, sure. I know. My God, I know. It is. No, it is one of those things, like when you, now and again, when people, particularly in the States, when you say where you're from, they're like, oh my God, like, how did you get out alive? And if you see like imagery now of what was our normal news, it blows your mind. I mean, it really does. You cannot believe what you're seeing, the rioting, and police didn't drive normal cars. They drove those things they called meat wagons, those big armoured Land Rovers, and just people petrol bombing each other over sort of barricades. And it was, you didn't blink. Yeah. You didn't blink watching that in the 90s and 80s and 90s from the time that I remember. It was just so normal. And now you realise how crazy it was.
Yeah, and how much impact it has. I'm really bad at timekeeping, but I'm just so fascinated by everything that you're saying that I'm so sorry we've only just done one failure. Yeah. But let's move on to this is how you write it. Failure to be very good in a TV show called Once Upon a Time, resulting in being killed after 9 episodes. Before we get to that, tell us how you got into acting, because your lovely sister Jess, who is basically how we've organised this podcast, who I know a bit, and I'm so grateful to her, she claims that it's all because of her, and she got you into Model Behaviour, a Channel 4 reality TV show.
Right, yes. Let's give her the due credit there. She did. I'd acted at school. I'd done a bit of youth theatre back home too. I'd done a bit of Amdram at home too. So it's not like it was alien to me. At school, by the time I came to 6th year, you couldn't be active in the drama department and also play rugby at a particular level, because rehearsals for plays were at the same time as training basically for rugby. So I did drama at GCSE and I'd done all the productions up until that point. And when it came to 6th year, I basically had a choice and I chose rugby. I don't regret that for a second, at the time of my life playing rugby. But it meant that I was hadn't really featured in my sort of late teens in any sort of dramatic sense. But I'd always loved it. I knew I could do it a bit. I knew I had something in me to give in that department, let's say. And when I dropped out of uni after a year and I said to my dad, I want to go to London. He says, why? I said, I don't really know. I had this belief that something good would happen if I went to London. So I sort of convinced my dad to let me go. And I'd secured a job in a pub before I went there. I knew I had this job in this bar called Tattersall's Tavern in Knightsbridge, which I believe is still there. And I worked there for 6 months. In that summer that I dropped out of uni, my dad just wanted me to do anything, like anything that was constructive. A low point one day, came back and I drank a lot that summer and didn't achieve a lot, I have to say. And one day I de-strung and taken all the strings out of a tennis racket that I'd broken a string on. Hadn't re-strung it, I'd just taken all the strings out. And Dad was like, what'd you do today? And I was just standing holding this tennis racket with a hole in it, saying, I took all the strings out of this, I was thinking of getting it. And then he sort of took me away for a chat. He called me a waster, actually, I remember very clearly. He said I was a waster. And I didn't disagree with him. I was a waster that summer. I was really achieving nothing. Very evident to the rest of my family that I was wasting everything away. Not everything away, it's not like I had anything to waste, but like I was just not achieving anything. And Jess, my sister, was just scrabbling around, was Lisa, my other sister, just trying to help me, like find some motivation. And Jess saw this ad for like some sort of open casting for this is very early days of even, I mean, I've sort of never even thought of that as a reality TV show, but I guess it was, but I just did so badly in it. I guess that's another failure, that I didn't get to a point where it felt like a reality TV show. So I went to this audition for this thing, Model Behaviour. Last thing in the world I want to do was model. I mean, no kid grows up. Maybe they do now. Certainly I didn't. I wasn't a kid growing up in Belfast going, I'd love to get my photograph taken for money. But anyway, it was something to do. And I convinced my mate, Andrew Hazard, to come with me. So I'm going to give Hazard a bit of credit here, because Jess had told me to go. It was at the Welly Park Hotel, which is beside Methody on the Malone Road. And on the way there, I called him. And it was like, we had to be there at like 9 a.m, which in those days was so early. Now that I've got 3 kids, that is a massive lie-in. But then it was so early, and I called him at like 8:45. I said, like, I'll pick you up in 10 minutes. No, I'm not coming. And I mate, please, like, my sister's going to kill me if I don't go to this thing. I don't want to go, mate. I don't want to go. I'm knackered. I'm still sleeping. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to turn around and just go home. And like, fuck this. Like, it's this point. Who wants to be a model anyway? And then there's something in me. It's like I heard my sister's, and my dad calling me a waster. It was something to fill the day, even if I just said to Dad, I went to that thing and I filled the day, Dad, doing that. I remember I was like, I'm going to turn back. And then I thought, I'm going to give Hazard one more go. I called him back, said, mate, you actually really need to do this for me. My family are going to kill me if I don't turn up to this thing. He said, all right, okay, pick me up in 5 minutes. So I did, I picked him up. And had he said no again, I really genuinely would turn around. Anyway, long story short, went. Did all right. I got through the Belfast part of it, which, greatest of respect, isn't a huge achievement, and got through to. By the way, Hazard didn't make it through the next day, and they came back the next day, and then the whole thing was they whittled you down, and they picked like 6 people from Ireland. There wasn't one in Dublin, so this was the All Ireland round or whatever. So there's a few dubs up and stuff, and it ended up being a few dubs and a few people from the north that all went to London, right? And that was the whole thing. You went to London, and there was like people from Manchester and Birmingham and Glasgow and all these places. And there was probably 40 of us, and they whittled that down to 20 and then to 10. And those 10 people then lived in an apartment together and went out on like castings together. And so I got nowhere near. I got half a day in London or something and was booted out. But I was very tenacious, I guess, and I don't really remember having this in me, but I remember taking the email of one of the judges, Kim von Dickman, who was one of the judges who's also an agent at Select. And I said, listen, do you think I could do this? And she was kind of like, basically call us if you ever come to London. And I took that as like, oh, wow, they want me to go to London and be a model. And my dad will be happy because it's something. So then I knew it wouldn't be something straight away. And there was all this contractual stuff that I couldn't do it right away because I'd been part of the show and they had to wait for there to be a winner before you got a contract with Select and all this bollocks. So I went back home and said, look, Dad, I think if I can get myself a job in a pub, I have this contact now at this modelling agency, I could probably do that. And fair play to him, like he agreed to let me do that. So basically, if I hadn't done that, that wouldn't have led to being an actor. So, if I hadn't made that first step, Jessica hadn't, suggested it, if Hazard hadn't answered the phone, I wouldn't be sat here, basically.
And if you hadn't been good looking enough, did you think you were good looking?
No way. No. I thought I looked like, I've said this before, I still think this, that I look like a thumb. If I don't have a beard, I look like a wee thumb, I think. So, no. I'd never been led to believe that I was good looking at that stage.
And when you started getting all these shoots and campaigns for Dior Homme and Calvin Klein, did you then think I'm good looking, or did it not percolate? For me, I never felt that I was the best looking guy and that's why I was getting these jobs. It's all about like having the right look for the time or whatever it is. But also for me, I think, and it harks back to what I was saying about school, and like people at the top of every industry, from every kind of industry you can think of, they're just people and they want good conversation and they respond to other human beings. I feel like my biggest asset was like, I tend to get on pretty well with people, which is, away from what school is trying to tell us of like important people are out of reach. You can't talk to them like they're humans. You can. And I don't care what reputation this photographer I've been told I'm working with and how, I'm like, he's just a fucking person. And you just talk. And I feel like my modelling career, I did inordinately well in it and I didn't expect to. But I think a lot of that was down to, I worked with a lot of the same people, a lot repetitively, big photographers, same fashion house. Had the same sort of campaigns with the same 2 or 3 very big clients. But it was all because by that stage I just got on well with the people and they know you, so they know what you're getting, rather than like, oh, he's the best looking person for the job. That's not what it was about. Sorry, I keep getting distracted by tangents, but there's so much I want to ask you. Did you or do you ever feel objectified? Oh, yeah, definitely not now, probably so much, but certainly when I was modelling, yeah. Because it's exactly what's happening. Yeah. You are being objectified, you are an object. And again, that's why, I was always sort of battling against that and trying to make it not that and not like you're this thing we've hired to look pretty lying on the fucking sofa. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'd probably be like, oh no, can we not have this experience where we all talk and you don't just tell me where to put my face and push me around the place? I guess it is a lot of time in that world. I always just tried to sort of make it fun because I didn't like it. Today I hate getting my photograph taken. I'm very uncomfortable with it. And I wasn't a good model. I did well from it, but I wasn't good at it, I don't think. And the whole 50 Shades of Grey thing and the idea that you are countless women's and men's heartthrob. Like that if we still had posters, there would be posters of you blue tacked up on sort of teenage girls' bedrooms walls and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. How does that sit with you? Because that's also objectification. Any actor, whatever's putting themselves in that position, I guess, like that happened, my sisters grew up pictures of Johnny Depp on their wall, and that's just... Brad Pitt for me. Brad Pitt, yeah. I mean, I had some Ulster rugby players on my wall. And then I had a black and white picture of Liv Tyler that I used to kiss before I went to sleep every night. Oh my God, that's so sweet. And I was once with someone, I was once with someone who knew that story and she was a friend of hers. And she goes, Jamie, get on the phone here. And I was like, and she put me on the phone to fucking Liv Tyler. And she's like, oh my God, I heard your story and you used to kiss me. I was like, oh, fuck this. I had no idea what to say there. Yeah, I mean, objectification is sadly a bit of a part that comes with the territory, I think. Okay, now tell me about Once Upon a Time, the TV show. Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time? Okay, I should have been a really good interviewer and watched it, but I haven't ever seen it. I'm sorry. So listen, I guess I was at a point in my career where my first ever job I did, my first ever audition, I had an agent for 5 days.
And my first ever audition was for Sophia Coppola's Marie Antoinette, and I got it. And it was a decent part, like not a huge part, but like quite integral to the whole thing. And I remember thinking, fuck, this is mad. Like I just like straight off the bat, I've got this great job. Sophia had literally just won an Academy Award for Lost in Translation. So much hype about the movie. It's a big studio movie at Sony. And I was like, this is class. Cut to, barely working for the next 8 years. But in that time I was modelling, so I had this kind of cushy situation of being able to afford to not be devastated if auditions didn't go my way, which were so many. And I hadn't worked in a while. I was feeling a bit low about it. I was thinking that I maybe just didn't really want to do it anymore. I had this very good reputation. I was like with the best agent in London. I was with CAA in LA. And like on paper, it looked like I was so set, but I wasn't working. And I was out there for pilot season, which is a pretty grim environment to spend time in, which is just like, herded around like cattle in LA, trying to score any gig. And it's such a strange thing because you can get a pilot and just be delighted because it's guaranteed money. It might not even get picked up, but you sign your life away for 5 years. And then sometimes you get these people who do book one of those pilots and it does run for 5 years and it's a horror show of a production and they're locked in and actually they're better than that or whatever it is. And you get George Clooney who did 9 pilots that didn't get picked up. And that's 9 years of your life because you can't sign up to more than one pilot. So it's a horrible environment and you're all sitting in the room together, a load of guys who look almost identical to you, all trying to achieve the same thing. And I was out there for pilot season. You're always depressed during pilot season anyway. And I was out there, and to stave off the depression, I'd brought my girlfriend at the time with me, who's now my wife. I was like, listen, will you come out and be there with me? Because I just will need you to get through this. I also proposed to her out then in LA in that time, which made everything better.
Where did you propose?
At our friend's house in LA where we met.
Did you get down on one knee?
I did the whole shebang, But I was out in LA and I hadn't really been doing very well with the auditions. I hate auditioning. I'm a terrible auditioner. And I suddenly got this call that I had to audition for this thing once upon a time that there was a lot of hype about. It was the sort of pilot that everyone wanted to book. It was ABC production. It was Eddie Kitsis and Adam Horowitz, who were 2 of the main writers on Lost. So there was a lot of hype about it. And I basically got it and was truly under the belief that it had changed my life, and it did. And I feel like it did at a time where I really hadn't worked in a long time and I was on the show that everyone would be on. So I came back, shot the pilot in Vancouver, came back, and then you've got this sort of horrible 2-3 month wait to find out does the pilot get picked up, and you've signed on to be in it for 5 or 6, 7 years. I can't remember what it was. And I got a phone call that the pilot had been picked up. I was like, oh my God, brilliant, here we go, happy days, getting paid a load of money to be in this show that is on a big network show and everything. My agent was like, the show's been picked up, but they're going to kill your character off pretty early. I was like, right, okay. They tried to spin it that it was like a story thing. They were always going to kill one of the characters off because that sort of happens in shows. I now know that it was probably just bollocks. They test the shit out of those pilots. They'll test audience them, and I think probably everyone was like, get rid of that dude. And I actually always felt very uncomfortable in the role. I felt like I wasn't this guy. I sort of didn't ever really know what to do with it. I couldn't really hang my hat on anything with him. I don't know why. So I felt like I wasn't very good in it. So then I had this strange thing of having to go back and shoot 8 more episodes, but knowing it was going to be over for me. And really, truly believing that my world had kind of ended. I remember going out, my flatmate Jonesy at the time, it was his wee brother's birthday. We were going for pints in Notting Hill somewhere. And I remember I was like, I don't think I can go, and sitting with Millie and crying and being like, I can't see people. I was so embarrassed by it all because everyone was going to be like, what's happened with your show? Has it got picked up? Are you moving to Vancouver? And I was going to have to be like, yeah, I'm going, but won't be going for as long as I thought maybe. Anyway, cut to, I get killed off. The fall comes my way, and wow. If I would have been on that show for 7 years, I wouldn't have been able to do the fall. So actually, again, it's a failure that ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the time, I would never have believed you if you said that. So
2 things there. One is, thank you so much for talking honestly about what it's like to be an actor who fails. Because I think a lot of actors listen to this podcast, which I'm very grateful for. And it's super helpful, I think, to hear about the other side of fame and glitz and success. Sure. That actually there is all this stuff that I imagine is very difficult not to take personally because it's you that's being judged at the end of the day.
Once you get over that, that's huge. I think my sister told you, I nearly wrote that one of my failures was not being as eloquent as Daisy Edgar Jones. I listened to her with you, and she's like 22 or something. 21.
I think she just turned 22. You're right. I know.
Stop.
She's amazing.
And I just could never have spoken about what we do with such poise and decorum as she does, and elegance. I still can't, clearly, as I ramble on here. I like that too. I like hearing when other actors, because it's brutal. It's really tough. Like, it's really tough. And I feel so fortunate to be in the position I am now and have a choice over the work I do and have lots of work come my way because I've been there. I've been at the other side of it where that isn't the case. And it's really challenges your idea of your own self-worth. If you've really committed to doing something and that thing isn't working out for you, you really question yourself, you know.
The second thing I wanted to say is that I know that you are an atheist. At least that's what Wikipedia said, so I'm hoping it's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I lean more towards agnostic now. I don't know kind of why, but in the last few years I've maybe went more towards that slightly softer version.
One of the things that I was going to ask you, which I guess might explain some of that, is that a couple of times you've said stuff that makes me feel that you believe in destiny, that you were destined to be a father of your three girls, that actually being killed off and once upon a time led you to the fall.
Yeah.
Is that accurate, do you think?
Yeah, but I just wouldn't staple any of that to religion.
Yeah.
Probably for me personally. You know, it's like those little snippets of that you pick up along the way, and like someone just once said to me that saying of what's for you won't pass you by. And there's certain things you hear and that just really has stuck with me. And it makes all your failings, of which there have been many and will continue to be many, way more palatable and digestible. You know, and listen, I've had that with jobs. You know, I've had that with jobs where I've turned down and they've become like the biggest hit the fucking year. And I'm like, shit, should I have done that? And then, but something else comes along that you wouldn't have been able to do, you know, and I think you have to apply that to the vocation that I'm in. I sort of believe that you're on a bit of a path. These challenges are put in your way, or these great things that happen that are all sort of for you, based on that thing that, like, if it's not for you, it won't land on your lap type thing. I feel like I don't consider it too much. I don't look into it too much. Once that event happens, like once I do have three girls, or once I do get this job because I didn't do well in that job, I'm very accepting of it, and I then sort of tell myself that it was kind of like all part of the plan. And I'm maybe aware that there's a bit of a path, but I'm not like really zeroed in on it, and I don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense, that you can choose to attach meaning to something retrospectively.
Exactly.
I mean, that's definitely the way that I choose to live, because otherwise sadness would happen for no reason.
Yeah, and then you'd also just be inside your head too much, and I always try not to be really heady, and I'm always trying to get outside of my own head, and actually having kids is the best thing for that. It's the best thing for that through lockdown, particularly 3 months of that. Having a focus that isn't going on based purely on what's good for you works for me. You know, I need that. If I spend too much time in my own head, I get freaked out.
I know, it's very exciting for me because this is the first interview that I've done post-lockdown, which is face-to-face.
Right, I see.
I feel like I've lost all capacity for small talk and social interaction, so I hope this is going okay.
No, and we're holding the Amazon delivery drivers around for like minutes. He's like, I've got to go. No, here, Tommy, come here. Where are you going now? Any of your kids well? You know, just like desperate for chat. It's been a strange time.
Your final failure is your failure to sit still, which is such a charming failure to choose.
How have I done today? I feel like I've been battling it a wee bit here because I do have to sit still. It's funny when I said to my wife this morning before I came, she said, "Did you decide?" She knew I'd decided on the first two or whatever. What did you decide for the third failure? And I said, because I had plenty of options, obviously. I said, a failure to sit still. And she went, uh-huh. She said, did you say you could add on and quiet? And I was like, right. I'm going to defend myself a wee bit here. You get blood tests done all the time as an actor. You have to do a medical before every job.
Do you?
If you're a lead in something, and if the production can't really continue without your health being in check, then you need to do these medicals. And sometimes they're really thorough and you're on a fucking treadmill or hooked up to all these pads and a big mask on. Sometimes they're testing you for very specific things like, you know, illegal drugs and all kinds of stuff, right? You go through. And it's kind of great because you get like a free medical every year and you get a proper checkup. And sometimes it's much less than that. Sometimes it's a cough and a whistle and out you go. But in a very early medical I had, and then I've had it done a few times since, my bloods were tested for adrenaline, and I have very high levels of adrenaline in my system. So that is my excuse for what I feel is struggling to sit still and to be still, and sometimes maybe to be quiet too. I'm a terrible singer. Like, I don't mean I'm terrible. I'm an okay singer, but like what I mean is I'm terrible. Like, I do it all the time, and I'm probably a bit of a nightmare to be around a lot of the time because of that. I think I make a lot of noise and I move a lot, and I'm one of those people who really genuinely struggles unless I've exercised. When I was younger, I was playing a lot of sport and playing a lot of rugby and stuff. I got that out of my system, so I probably was a bit calmer. But as you get older and you've kids, and as much as you're running about after them, I'm not running about after a ball or running with a ball. So it's a strange thing now. If I don't run or work out or play football or whatever it is, I'm way worse when it comes to a certain time, particularly around 5. My wife calls it shouty bangy time. Which is like something you'd apply to your toddlers. Everyone I've lived with is acutely aware of this situation, and it's usually around that time of the day. Something about my adrenaline levels, blood sugar levels, whatever. I go a bit hyper around that time.
That's fascinating. And then what happens? Do you have after the spike? Do you have
a bit of a crash?
Yeah.
I will sometimes have a bit of a crash. I have quite low lows, I have to say, I think, and that's related to everything I'm saying about bloods and stuff. And I'm a on-form person most of the time. You know, I don't think anyone would think of me as someone who, again, me trying to not be inside my head a lot. I try to not be inside my head a lot, and I'm trying to communicate with people often. Probably too much for my wife's liking. She is an only child and is a very calm person and likes calm a lot of time, and probably I'm not ideal. The guy, as I've been writing this script that we've kind of finished, I've been, you know, in a room with him for a couple of weeks. He's a very close friend anyway, but he's never spent that type of time with me. And, you know, him and my wife are very close, and Connor, his name's Connor McNeil. And Connor's like, we came up after a couple of days in my office together, and to Millie, he was like, how do you live with him? And she was like, I know. I was like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm standing here. And like, I guess I'm not that aware of how annoying it can be, but I think it is.
So is going to the theatre your idea? Yeah.
Nightmare. Especially those old theatres where there's no leg room and stuff. Tell you what, one of the hardest things was doing the fall, because I'd made a choice to play him very still, which was a nightmare for me. And then by the third series, I pretty much spent the whole series in a hospital bed. A massive challenge again for me. Even the props guys coming in and say, Jamie, every time you keep moving, every time you move, we have to replace this. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm really trying not to do it. I just can't. Terrible.
And that's something you've always had? Which
I believe so, yeah. Yeah,
squirmy Jamie.
Active child, yeah, an active man. Yeah. Squirmy. Yeah.
You've done very well today, I have to say.
Thanks.
It doesn't feel rude at all. It feels like part of your expression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it has become that, you know. But now when I see it, I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? You know, I'll see like like an interview of myself on like a red carpet or something. I'm literally like rocking back and forth like I'm in some like asylum. It's mad. You know, thank God this isn't on camera. I still hate hearing my voice. I hate seeing myself, being myself. I'm okay. I don't love watching myself act. It's much easier if I'm watching myself in something good, because you're usually better if it's something that's well written. Great words make great actors, as O'Toole said. I'm a huge believer in that, and that's okay. But watching me be myself, I cannot stand it. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, sit still. Why are you doing that with your eyes? Oh my God, do you know your knees doing that? I just can't believe how kinetic I am. It's
so interesting. Well, I think that shows that you are the polar opposite of a narcissist, which is a great thing. But I've watched your many chat shows. I've never noticed the squirming. You're an impeccable chat show guest. You have that down pat. Like, you're so good at it, having just the right anecdote and being sort of friendly and funny and engaging. It's a skill being a good chat show guest, I imagine.
Thanks. I look like a lot of that's on the host, I reckon. I think Graham Norton's the best in the world at that.
I totally agree, and I love every single one of your appearances on Graham Norton.
Oh, thank you.
The walking one particularly.
Thank you. Jesus, that comes up a lot with people who don't know me. It's very funny. I think it was the first time I ever did Graham Norton, and it's amazing how many times I talk about it. And also, I mean, I'm still very aware of my walk and still very uncomfortable with the way I walk. In fact, today, I parked my car over there down the street, and I got out of the car and went, fuck, I'm like 50 yards from your house. And what if you're looking out and the first impression you have of me is walking? I'm not joking. I was like,
sweet.
She's going to be like, oh, Jesus Christ, look at this guy.
I don't think I want him on the podcast.
Like tiptoeing bouncing my way up the fucking road. So I was delighted when you hadn't seen me until I was standing in the door. And I thought, if I can get to that chair quick enough and then wriggle around in it for an hour and a half.
I have not noticed anything amiss with your walk. For anyone who hasn't seen that Graham Norton clip, first of all, I highly recommend it. And secondly, Jamie was talking about how you naturally walk on your toes.
Yeah, you want to see our 1.5-year-old, well, not quite one, she'll be 1.5 by the time this comes out. She is on her toes the entire time. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, it is something within me that they're inheriting, and I feel terrible about it. But yeah, I was basically taught when I had like dance lessons for something that you're actually meant to sort of, he said, it's like walking, you go heel to toe. And I was like, what? It's news to me. So yeah, I missed doing Graham Norton. It's funny, on New Year's Eve, we were with our best friends and we were, drunk, and, you say all these lovely things at the stroke of midnight. And I turned around to Millie and I was like, I think I had 5 movies coming out in 2020. I said to Millie, I really think this is going to be 2020 is going to be a great year for me. Cut to the worst year of all time for absolutely everyone, except whoever owns Netflix. Yeah, it was this weird thing, and actually a part of me is upset is like not getting to sit on Graham's sofa and promote some of the movies, which I will hopefully get to at some time. And that whole remote thing that he was doing, it was hard, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Yeah, it doesn't have
wasn't
the same
quite working.
feeling.
Yeah, I felt sorry for I think Paul Mescal had to do it, didn't he, early on, at the, obviously it'd be like his first time doing the show, and he's sat in his flat in Hackney. Felt quite sorry for him.
Are you friends with Paul Mescal just because you're both Irish?
I am now. Listen, he's one of my best mates now. Yeah. No, listen, I reached out to him. Reached out, that's such an American thing to say. It's my agent says it all the time. I text him. Again, listen, Ireland's the smallest place in the world, so it is not 6 degrees of separation. In Ireland, it's 1. 2 maybe. One of the very good mates is a very good mate of his, so I said, ask Paul if it's okay for me to get in touch. So I did. So now I'm in touch with him. But sometimes you watch something, you're just compelled. Yeah. And I find myself, I think we should do that more in my game because everyone is so accessible. I've never had a situation yet where I've been moved by someone's performance or a director on something that I haven't been able to get in touch with. If you have good representation, you can do that. And I think it's a good thing, and it's something I'm doing more of now because it doesn't happen to me loads, but it certainly has happened to me. And from people that you just never expect that are seeing, usually it's the fall, very, heighty actors getting in touch. And I'm like, oh, wow, I've never done that. So I'm starting to do that more because I think it's nice to hear it from peers, saying, by the way, what you did and that was phenomenal. And I just want you to know that. It might mean nothing coming from me that I'm telling you that, but I'd like you to know that. I think it's right that you know that.
Also, who better to guide him through instant fanatical heartthrob status than you? I
mean, it feels even bigger for him, I think, because we were all in lockdown when the obsession began with that show. And it must have just been so strange for him to be feeling that all through his phone and on his laptop and not in reality. It's probably fucking good for him, to be honest, that's the case. But he's going to get a proper shock when the pubs open. Yeah. And, well, they'll open by the time this is... He's probably been kidnapped or something by now, Paul, to be honest. By the time this comes out, there'll be people see him and just jump him and throw him in a van.
Jamie Dornan, inveterate squirmer.
Yes.
I never noticed your walk. I think you're just such a lovely, interesting, warm person, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on How to Fail.
Thank you. I can't wait to fail many more times so I get to come on again.
Oh yeah, please will you?
I will. Time. Don't worry. I'll be making lots of failures. Don't worry.
If If you enjoyed this episode of How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, I would so appreciate it if you could rate, review and subscribe. Apparently, it helps other people know that we exist.